The 10-second mistake that costs you $10,000 forever. Most people lose thousands on Medicare because of a 10-second decision. They delay or decline Part B at 65 when their coverage isn't creditable. That mistake adds a permanent late enrollment penalty to your bill every month for life. It looks small at first, but over retirement it snowballs into 5 figures. In this video, you'll learn exactly what the penalty is when it applies, the traps that trigger it, and the simple rules that keep you safe. I'll also show quick math so you can see your real cost, plus how to fix it fast if you already slipped, COBRA, retiree plans, HSAs included. The penalty, plain English, what it is and why it sticks. Let's make the penalty crystal clear so you can avoid it with confidence. The Medicare Part B late enrollment penalty is an extra charge added to your Part B premium if you don't sign up when you're first eligible and you weren't covered by qualifying job-based insurance from current employment. The core rule is simple. For every full 12-month period you delayed Part B without that protection, Medicare adds 10% of the standard Part B premium to your bill. Here's the important nuance. The penalty is calculated off the standard Part B premium, not your income-adjusted premium. So even if your income is higher and you pay IRMAA, the percentage calculation uses the base number. Then the penalty gets added on top of whatever your actual Part B premium is. IRMAA and the late penalty are separate charges, and yes, they can stack. Why does this exist? It's there to discourage people from waiting to enroll until they get sick, what's called adverse selection. That's the policy reason, but I get why it feels unfair. Many people think their employer plan, COBRA, or retiree coverage will protect them. Some do, many don't. The Social Security Administration and Medicare are strict about what counts. Let me back up and separate Part A and Part B because this is where people get mixed up. Part A, hospital insurance, is premium-free for most people and has its own penalty rules only if you have to buy it. Part B, medical insurance, always has a monthly premium, and that's where the lifetime penalty bites. We're focusing on Part B here because it's the one most people accidentally delay, and that mistake follows you as long as you have Part B. So what counts as a delay that triggers the penalty? Any period after your initial enrollment period where you could have had Part B but didn't, and you were not covered by group health insurance based on current employment, yours or your spouse's, at a large employer. We'll define current employment and large employer later, but flag this now. COBRA, retiree coverage, and individual marketplace plans don't protect you from the Part B penalty. How does the math actually work? Take the number of full 12-month periods you went without Part B after your first eligibility, multiply by 10%, and apply that to the standard Part B premium. If you went 2 full years, that's 20%. If you went 7 full years, that's 70%. The penalty is then added to your monthly premium and sticks around for as long as you keep Part B. It's not a one-time fee. It doesn't phase out. It's permanent while you're enrolled. Here's a quick example to make it click. Say you were eligible at 65 but delayed Part B for 2 full years without creditable coverage. Your penalty is 20% of the standard premium. That extra charge gets added every month. Over retirement that could last 20 years or more, that just 20% becomes real money. We'll run the lifetime math later so you can estimate your own cost. The thing most people miss is the difference between a late enrollment penalty and IRMAA. IRMAA is an income-related surcharge if your modified adjusted gross income is above certain thresholds. It can change year to year based on your tax returns. The late penalty, on the other hand, is based on how long you delayed, not your income, and it's not recalculated annually except as the standard premium changes. Both can show up on the same bill. Now you might be thinking, if I missed once, am I doomed forever? Not quite. The penalty is lifetime, but you can stop it from getting bigger by enrolling as soon as you're eligible again. If you qualify for a special enrollment period because you had coverage from current work, you may avoid the penalty entirely, provided you enroll within that window and can prove it with the right employer form. If you don't qualify, you'll use the general enrollment period and the penalty will likely apply. Actually, let me spell out the for life part because it's the most frustrating line on the bill. The penalty stays for as long as you have Part B. If you disenroll from Part B, the penalty is paid off. It's simply not charged while you're not enrolled. If you later re-enroll, it returns. So the smarter play is to prevent it in the first place or cut it short by getting into Part B at the next available window. Before we dive into the biggest traps, COBRA, retiree plans, small employer rules, spouse coverage, and HSAs, remember this checkpoint. If you're not covered by active large employer insurance, your safe path is to enroll in Part B when first eligible. If you're covered by active large employer insurance, you may delay safely, but you'll need proof when you sign up later. Coming up, we'll unpack those traps so you don't learn this the expensive way. The 4 biggest traps that trigger the penalty. Now here's where most people mess up, not because they're careless, but because the rules don't match what HR or the insurer tells them on the phone. 6 situations cause most late penalties. If you recognize yourself in any of these, don't panic. I'll show you the safe rule and the fix. First, the COBRA trap. When you leave a job, COBRA lets you keep the same group plan for up to 18 months or more. It feels like you're still covered, so people assume they can delay Part B. The thing most people miss is that COBRA is not coverage based on current employment. That phrase, current employment, is the key that unlocks the Part B special enrollment period. Without it, your clock doesn't stop. So if you take COBRA after 65 and skip Part B, you can face 2 problems. 1, claim denials because Medicare was supposed to pay first once you hit 65. 2, you won't get a Part B special enrollment period when COBRA ends. You'll be stuck waiting for the general enrollment period, and the late penalty likely applies. The safe move: if you're 65 or older when you lose active coverage, enroll in Part B during your 8-month special enrollment period, whether or not you take COBRA. If you want COBRA for extras, fine, but don't let it replace Part B. Second, the retiree coverage trap. Many employers offer retiree health benefits. That sounds like a seamless bridge into Medicare, but retiree plans are not active employment coverage. Most are built on the assumption that Medicare is primary. If you don't enroll in Part B, the retiree plan may pay little or nothing. And just like COBRA, retiree coverage doesn't give you a Part B special enrollment period when it ends. The safe rule here is simple. If you go onto a retiree plan at or after 65, you should enroll in Part B during your initial enrollment period or your 8-month SEP tied to stopping work. Always confirm with the retiree plan if they require Part B. Most do, and get that in writing. Third, the small employer trap. Under 20 employees, the size flips the payer order. For employers with fewer than 20 employees, Medicare is primary once you're 65. That means your group plan pays secondary, and often it won't pay at all if you don't have Part B. This is the one that blows up claims and causes retroactive bills. The fix is straightforward. At 65, enroll in Part A and Part B if you're covered by a small employer plan, yours or your spouse's. Now here's the wrinkle. Some small employers participate in multi-employer plans or professional employer organizations. If at least one employer in that plan has 20 or more employees and the plan treats Medicare as secondary, you may be protected. Don't guess. Call benefits and ask specifically, is Medicare primary or secondary for active employees age 65 plus? If Medicare is primary, you need Part B. Fourth, the spouse coverage trap. Being on your spouse's plan doesn't automatically protect you. The same rules apply. Is your spouse actively working, and is the employer size 20 or more? If yes, Medicare is typically secondary and you can delay Part B safely. If not, if your spouse is retired on COBRA or at a small employer, then Medicare is primary, and delaying Part B risks penalties and unpaid claims. Quick checklist for spouse coverage: active work status, employer headcount, and who pays first. Get those 3 answers before you decide. Fifth, the HSA timing trap. If you're contributing to a health savings account and want to keep contributing, you can delay Medicare, but only if you're covered by an HSA qualified plan through active employment at a large employer. 2 timing rules bite people. 1, you can't contribute to an HSA for any month you're enrolled in any part of Medicare. 2, when you enroll in Part A after 65, Part A can backdate up to 6 months. That retroactive start makes those past HSA contributions excess and potentially subject to tax penalties unless you correct them before the tax deadline. The safe practice is to stop HSA contributions at least 6 months before you apply for Medicare, and coordinate your application date carefully. If you accidentally overcontributed, call your HSA custodian and request a timely return of excess contributions and earnings. Finally, the marketplace or individual plan trap. ACA plans, short-term plans, or any individual policy do not count as coverage based on current employment for Part B timing. Once you hit 65, your safe window is your initial enrollment period unless you or your spouse are actively working at a large employer and covered by that employer plan. If you stay on an individual plan past 65 and skip Part B, expect a penalty and possible gaps. Here's the shortcut nobody teaches. Before you rely on any non-active employer coverage, COBRA, retiree, marketplace, assume it does not protect you from the Part B penalty. The only shield is active, current employment coverage from an employer with 20 or more employees where Medicare is secondary. If you remember nothing else, remember that sentence. Once you nail that, everything else clicks. Next, we'll set the 3 clocks that keep you safe and show you exactly how to time your enrollment. The only 3 clocks that matter, rules that keep you safe. Before we jump into scenarios, you need the 3 clocks in your head. If you get these right, you'll avoid 95% of penalties and gaps. We'll keep it clean, what the clock is, why it matters, how to use it, and what proof to keep. Clock 1 is your Initial Enrollment Period, or IEP. It's a 7-month window centered on your 65th birthday, the 3 months before you turn 65, your birthday month, and the 3 months after. If you don't have job-based coverage from current employment at a large employer, yours or your spouse's, this is your safe runway to enroll in Part A and Part B with no penalty. The reason this matters is simple: miss it without qualifying employer coverage, and you can't just jump in any month you want. You'll likely wait for the general enrollment period and risk a penalty. Here's how the IEP behaves. If you enroll in the first 3 months before your birthday month, your coverage starts the month you turn 65. Enroll in your birthday month or the 3 months after, and Part B starts the month after you sign up. Quick win: if you're not working for a large employer at 65, put a reminder 90 days before your birthday to start the application. Common mistake to avoid: thinking an ACA marketplace plan or a retiree plan lets you skip your IEP. It doesn't. If you remember nothing else about the IEP, remember this: use it unless you're protected by active large employer coverage. Clock 2 is your Special Enrollment Period, or SEP, for people covered by job-based insurance from current work at a large employer. This is the lifeline that prevents penalties when you delay Part B because you or your spouse are actively working. The SEP runs for 8 months after the earlier of 2 events: you stop working or your employer coverage based on that work ends. Not COBRA, not retiree coverage, the active plan. The reason this clock is powerful is that it lets you enroll in Part B penalty-free after 65, as long as you stayed on that qualifying coverage and enroll within the 8-month window. How to use the SEP correctly. As soon as you lock in your retirement date or know when the employer coverage ends, line up 2 forms. CMS 40B is your application for Part B. CMS L564 is the employer verification that proves coverage from current employment and the dates. Ask HR or benefits to complete the L564 and list exact start and end dates of coverage. Then submit both forms to Social Security together. That pairing is what keeps the penalty away. Don't rely on a phone call, get the L564 signed. Common mistake: waiting until COBRA ends to enroll. Your SEP clock started when work or active coverage ended, not when COBRA ends. If you blow the 8 months, you'll slide to the GEP and the penalty likely attaches. Clock 3 is the General Enrollment Period, or GEP. This is the safety net if you missed your IEP and don't qualify for an SEP. It runs every year from January 1 through March 31. When you enroll in Part B during the GEP, your coverage starts the month after you sign up. That's better than the old rules, but there's still a catch. If you had a gap where you should have had Part B and didn't, the late enrollment penalty will likely be added, and you could have a coverage gap until the month after enrollment. Why this clock matters: it's your reset button, but it's not cost-free. The move here is to use it quickly if you missed, rather than waiting and letting the penalty grow. Now, what actually counts as current employer coverage for these rules? 2 parts need to be true. 1, the coverage is through you or your spouse's active employment, not retiree, not COBRA. 2, the employer has 20 or more employees, or you're in a multi-employer plan where at least one employer has 20 or more and the plan treats Medicare as secondary. When those conditions are met, your group plan is primary, Medicare is secondary, and you can safely delay Part B if either condition fails: no active work or under 20 employees, Medicare is primary. In that case, you should enroll in Part B at 65 to avoid denials and penalties. Let's talk proof, because paperwork keeps you safe. The CMS L564 from your employer is the gold standard to prove you had coverage from current employment. It documents employer size and coverage dates. Keep copies of your insurance cards, plan summaries, and termination letters. Before leaving a job, call benefits and ask, is my coverage based on current employment? How many employees does the employer have? Is Medicare primary or secondary for age 65 plus? Write down names and dates. Tie this together with a quick decision path. If you're at 65 with no active large employer coverage, use your IEP and enroll in A and B. If you're at a large employer and actively working, you can delay Part B and rely on your SEP later. Just keep your L564 proof. If you're at a small employer, enroll in Part A and B at 65. If you missed and don't qualify for an SEP, use the GEP immediately. Once you nail these 3 clocks, IEP, SEP, GEP, everything else clicks. Next, we'll apply them to real-life work situations so you know exactly what to do. Scenario playbook: still working at 65, large employer. If you or your spouse are actively working at a large employer, 20 or more employees, you've got options. The big advantage here is Medicare is typically secondary, so you can delay Part B without a penalty as long as you stay on that active employer plan. That said, delaying isn't always the best move. Let's walk the trade-offs: how to enroll later with no penalty, and the HSA timing details that trip people up. Why delay at all? If your employer plan is good and inexpensive, keeping it can make sense. You avoid paying 2 premiums at once, you keep your doctor network, and you preserve your Part B special enrollment period for later. The flip side, if your employer plan has a high premium or a very high deductible, enrolling in Part B at 65 might actually lower your out-of-pocket costs. This clicked for me, helping a viewer who paid $500 a month for a spouse plan with a $3,000 deductible. Part B plus a Medigap plan beat that cost and opened up a broader network. Now, the safe rule. You can delay Part B penalty-free if both are true. The coverage is from current employment, and the employer has at least 20 employees or is part of a multi-employer plan where Medicare is secondary. If both are true, Medicare is secondary and your group plan is primary. If either fails, no active work or employer under 20, don't delay Part B. How do you enroll later without a penalty? Use your Part B special enrollment period when you retire or lose the active employer plan. You'll submit 2 forms together: CMS 40B to apply for Part B and CMS L564, which your employer completes to prove you had coverage from current employment and list the dates. The reason this works is simple. Social Security needs written proof of those dates to waive the penalty. Don't wait until COBRA starts to file. Your 8-month SEP starts when the active coverage or work ends, whichever happens first. Pro move: ask HR for the L564 60 days before your last day, and line up your Part B start for the first of the month after the employer plan ends so there's no gap. Let's talk timing with spouses. If you're on your spouse's active large employer plan, the same SEP applies based on your spouse's employment. When your spouse retires, your 8-month clock starts the same month that active coverage ends. Get one L564 from the employer that lists both of you as covered, or separate forms if that's how the HR system works. Either way, match the dates. Now the HSA wrinkle, because this is where people lose money. If you're contributing to a health savings account and want to keep contributing, you can delay Medicare completely, but only while you're covered by an HSA qualified plan through active employment at a large employer. Once you enroll in any part of Medicare, your HSA contribution limit drops to 0 for that month forward. There's also the 6-month retroactive Part A rule if you enroll in Part A after 65. That retroactive start can make past contributions excess. The practical fix: stop HSA contributions 6 months before you plan to apply for Medicare, or simply delay applying for both Part A and Part B until you're truly done contributing. If you accidentally overcontributed, ask your HSA custodian for a timely return of excess contributions and earnings before the tax deadline. Common mistakes I see all the time: HR saying you don't need Medicare at all. Clarify what they mean. You may not need Part B now, but you still need to plan your SEP and keep proof. Another is assuming COBRA is just an extension of active coverage. It's not. Your SEP starts when active coverage ends, not when COBRA ends. Waiting until COBRA finishes can push you past 8 months and into penalties. A quick now you try checklist to make this real. First, confirm employer size and active work status. Ask, is Medicare primary or secondary for age 65 plus on this plan? Second, decide if delaying Part B saves money compared to staying on the group plan. Third, if delaying, set a reminder for 90 days before retirement to request the CMS L564 from HR and complete CMS 40B. Fourth, choose your Part B effective date to land the day after your employer plan ends. Fifth, if you have an HSA, pick your Medicare application date first, then count back 6 months and stop contributions by that date. One last practical tip: if you plan to enroll in a Medigap policy later, remember your Medigap open enrollment window starts when your Part B begins. Some people delay Part B specifically to push that window to retirement, which can be smart. Just be deliberate. If you forget and start Part B earlier than planned, you can't restart that 6-month Medigap window. Once you nail this large employer playbook, verify primary payer, line up the L564, sync dates, and plan HSA timing, you can delay Part B safely or enroll at 65 with confidence. Next, we'll flip it to the small employer version where the rules reverse and the risk of claim denials shoots up. Scenario playbook still working at 65 small employer. Now the small employer version flips the rules. If you or your spouse are actively working at an employer with fewer than 20 employees, Medicare is primary at 65. That means your group plan expects Medicare to pay first. If you don't have Part B, many claims get denied or paid at a much lower amount, and the unpaid balance lands on you. On top of that, delaying Part B here usually triggers the lifetime late enrollment penalty. Why this matters? Small group plans aren't designed to replace Medicare. They coordinate with it. Without Part B in place, the plan often treats your claim as if Medicare paid first, subtracts what Medicare would have paid, and reimburses little or nothing. I've seen people get stuck with thousands from routine outpatient care because they assumed I have insurance through work, I'm fine. You're not fine if Medicare is primary and you don't have Part B. So what's the safe move? Enroll in Part A and Part B at 65 if your employer has fewer than 20 employees. Keep the employee plan if you want the secondary benefits, but make sure Medicare is in place to pay first. If you enroll during your initial enrollment period, there's no penalty and your coverage can start right when you turn 65 or the month after you sign up. Now here's where it gets tricky. Confirming employer size. Don't rely on the company's feel of being small or large, get the actual count and context. Ask HR or the plan administrator 3 specific questions. How many employees does the employer have, counting full and part-time, for at least 20 weeks in the current or prior year? Is the plan a multi-employer or association plan where at least one employer has 20 or more employees? For age 65 plus active employees, is Medicare primary or secondary? If they say Medicare is primary, that's your cue, you need Part B. What about PEOs, union plans, or multiple related entities? This is the nuance most people miss. If your small company participates in a multi-employer plan and at least one participating employer has 20 or more employees, the plan may treat Medicare as secondary. But that status isn't automatic. It has to be how the plan is structured and administered. That's why the who pays first question is your shortcut. Get it in writing if you can. An email from benefits is perfect. How do you enroll correctly and coordinate with the small group plan? First, file for Part A and Part B during your initial enrollment period. If you're already past 65 but within 8 months of losing that small group coverage or stopping work, you can try to use the special enrollment period, but understand, SEP protection hinges on current employment coverage, not COBRA or retiree plans. With small employers, the bigger risk is you never had proper primary coverage to begin with. Once Part B is active, keep your small employer plan if the employer subsidizes it and it helps with secondary costs, or decide if switching to Medigap or Medicare Advantage is smarter. Run the numbers on premiums and out-of-pocket exposure. Don't assume the group plan is cheaper. Now, if you delayed Part B at a small employer, let's talk damage control. Step 1. Stop the penalty from growing by enrolling as soon as possible. If you're still working and covered by that small plan, you may not qualify for the SEP because Medicare was supposed to be primary all along. In that case, you'll likely use the general enrollment period between January 1 and March 31, with Part B starting the month after you enroll. Expect the late enrollment penalty, 10% of the standard Part B premium for each full 12-month period delayed, to be added for as long as you have Part B. Coverage gaps are the painful part. If you enroll during the GEP, you could have a gap until your Part B starts the next month. Bridge that gap by talking to your providers about timing elective care and asking the employer plan how they handle coordination while you're activating Medicare. This won't fix past denials, but it can keep new bills from piling up. Common mistakes to avoid. Assuming the company's headcount includes contractors or temps who aren't actually on payroll. The Medicare coordination rules look at employees, not 1099 contractors. Another mistake is believing a PEO automatically makes you large. It doesn't. Ask who the real employer of record is for your plan and whether the plan is treated as multi-employer with Medicare secondary status. Finally, waiting for COBRA to end before enrolling is a trap. Your SEP clock, if you have one, is tied to the end of active coverage or work, not COBRA. And with small employers, SEP protection may not apply anyway. Here's your quick action list. 1. Confirm in writing who pays first for 65 plus active employees. 2. If Medicare is primary, enroll in Part A and Part B at 65 or immediately if you're already past 65. 3. If you missed, use the next GEP right away to stop the penalty from growing. 4. Decide whether to keep the small group plan as secondary or move to Medigap or Medicare Advantage based on cost and coverage. 5. Keep documentation, plan summaries, HR emails, and any coordination of benefits statements in a folder in case you need to appeal claims. This is the section where small details save big money. Get the payer order right, enroll on time, and you'll avoid denials and the lifetime penalty. Scenario Playbook: retired before 65 or at 65, no active employer. If you're retired when you hit 65 or you stopped work before 65, the rules are simple and strict. You don't have active employer coverage. That means your safe move is to enroll in Part A and Part B during your initial enrollment period to avoid penalties and gaps. This is the group most often told you're covered until December. You can wait. You can't rely on that unless it's active, current employment coverage. Retiree plans, COBRA, marketplace policies, none of those protect you from the Part B penalty. Why act during your IEP? Because you can enroll without penalty and you control your start date. Your IEP is 7 months, 3 months before your 65th birthday, your birthday month, and 3 months after. If you apply in the first 3 months, your coverage can begin the month you turn 65. If you apply in your birthday month or the 3 after, Part B starts the month after you enroll. The action item here is to submit your application early enough to land your Medicare start the same day your pre-Medicare plan ends, so there's no gap. Now let's talk retiree plans. Many employers offer retiree coverage as a bridge. It can be valuable, but it almost always assumes Medicare is primary. If you don't enroll in Part B, the plan may pay little or nothing for outpatient care. Also critical, retiree coverage doesn't grant a Part B special enrollment period later. If you skip your IEP because you have retiree coverage, expect a penalty when you finally sign up, and you may be forced to wait for the general enrollment period. COBRA is similar. If you're offered COBRA when you retire at or after 65, you can take it for extra benefits, but it doesn't stop the Part B clock. Your 8-month SEP is tied to the end of active coverage or work, not COBRA. If you don't enroll in Part B during your IEP or SEP, you'll likely face the late penalty and a delay until the GEP. So the safe rule is, enroll in Part B when you retire at 65, even if you elect COBRA. Use COBRA as a supplement, not a substitute. Marketplace or individual plans don't help either. They're not employer coverage and don't count for Part B timing. Once you're 65, it's Medicare time unless you or your spouse are actively working at a large employer. If you stay on an ACA plan past 65 without Part B, you're setting yourself up for penalties and possible claim issues. Here's a timing checklist that keeps you safe. At T90 days before your 65th birthday month, start your Medicare application. Aim for Part A and Part B to start on the first of the month you turn 65 or the month after you apply if you're in the back half of the IEP. Confirm your current plan's end date in writing. If your plan ends on the last day of the month, pick Medicare for the first of the next month. If your birthday is on the first of the month, your Medicare can start the month prior. Plan accordingly. Build a one-page list with your coverage end date, Medicare start date, and any prescriptions you'll need covered the first week. If you missed your IEP and you're not protected by an SEP, your path is the general enrollment period, January 1 through March 31, with coverage starting the month after you enroll. The penalty usually applies, 10% of the standard Part B premium for each full 12 months you delayed. 2 practical moves reduce damage. 1. Enroll on January 1 if possible so your coverage starts in February and you minimize the gap. 2. Talk to your doctors about scheduling procedures after your Part B start and ask your pharmacy about short-term discount programs for any bridging prescriptions. Let's hit the HSA nuance quickly for early retirees who kept an HSA qualified plan. You can't contribute to an HSA for any month you're enrolled in Medicare. And if you enroll in Part A after 65, Part A can be retroactive up to 6 months, which can turn past contributions into excess. If you're enrolling at 65, just stop HSA contributions in your birthday month. If you delayed beyond 65, stop contributions 6 months before you plan to apply, or ask your HSA custodian to remove excess contributions and earnings before the tax deadline. Common mistakes to avoid: waiting until the day after your plan ends to file, that creates a gap. Assuming retiree coverage or COBRA counts like active employer insurance, it doesn't. And delaying because you think you can pick any start date you can't outside IEP, SEP, or GEP rules. Quick action list. 1. Decide now if you'll be retired at 65. 2. Map your IEP dates and apply early. 3. If you have retiree or COBRA options, enroll in Part B anyway and use them as secondary. 4. If you missed your IEP and have no SEP, use the next GEP immediately to stop penalty growth. 5. Keep your plan termination letter, any retiree plan booklet, and your Medicare approval letter together. Those documents solve problems fast. The COBRA and retiree coverage minefield. This is the danger zone because everything sounds safe on paper. You lose your job or retire, you're offered COBRA or a retiree plan, and it looks identical to what you had last month. But for Medicare timing, those aren't current employment coverage. That single detail is why penalties show up and claims get denied. Let's start with COBRA. COBRA lets you keep your old employer plan for a limited time, usually 18 months. Solid for continuity, but it doesn't protect you from the Part B late enrollment penalty. Your 8-month special enrollment period is tied to when active coverage ends or you stop working, whichever happens first. It doesn't wait for COBRA to end. So if you skip Part B, take COBRA for a year, and then try to enroll, you may be outside the 8 months. That means you'll need the general enrollment period, and you'll likely pay the penalty for as long as you have Part B. There's another sting. Once you're 65, Medicare is typically supposed to pay first unless you're covered by active employment at a large employer. If you're on COBRA without Part B, your COBRA plan may pay as if Medicare already paid, leaving you with the bill. I've seen people get caught on outpatient surgery, imaging, and even chemo because the plan processed claims as secondary to Medicare that wasn't there. The fix is simple but urgent. If you're 65 or older when your active coverage ends, enroll in Part B during your 8-month SEP, regardless of whether you take COBRA for extras. Now, retiree coverage. Retiree plans are designed to sit on top of Medicare, not replace it. Most retiree booklets literally say Medicare is primary. If you don't enroll in Part B, the retiree plan can deny or drastically reduce payment on services that Part B would have covered first. And just like COBRA, retiree coverage doesn't give you a Part B SEP when it ends. If you skipped Part B because you thought the retiree plan was enough, you'll likely face the late penalty and you may need to wait for the GEP to get in. Let me show you how to fix timing fast. If you just retired or lost active coverage and you're within 8 months, use your SEP right now. File CMS 40B to enroll in Part B and submit CMS L564 completed by your former employer to prove coverage from current work and list dates. Ask HR to include the last day of active coverage, not the end of COBRA. Choose a Part B start that lands the first of the month after your active plan ends, or as soon as possible if you already passed that date. If you're outside the 8 months, enroll during the GEP January through March, and your Part B starts the month after you sign up. Don't wait. Every month you delay can add to the penalty. Coordinating drop-add dates matters. If you're on COBRA and you add Part B, your COBRA may end automatically for medical benefits, or it may continue as secondary. Plans differ. Call the COBRA administrator and ask 2 questions. If I enroll in Medicare Part B, does my COBRA medical terminate, and on what date? And if it continues, how does it coordinate with Medicare? Get the answer in writing. If you have retiree coverage, ask the same questions. Many retiree plans require Part B. If you don't add it by a certain date, they can suspend payment on Part B type services. Align your Part B start so there's no gap. Documentation is your safety net. Keep the termination letter that shows your last day of active coverage, not just the COBRA election notice. Save your retiree plan booklet and any pages that say Medicare is primary or Part B is required. Keep copies of premium invoices, ID cards, and any emails from HR confirming dates. Those records help Social Security approve your SEP and help you appeal claim denials if a plan misapplies coordination rules. 2 quick micro stories to drive it home. A 66-year-old took COBRA for 18 months after retiring and skipped Part B when COBRA ended. He assumed he could join Part B right away. He couldn't. He had to wait for the GEP, started the month after, and got a 20% lifetime penalty. One document could have saved him, the employer's L564 showing the end of active coverage. He would have used the SEP within 8 months and paid no penalty. Another client jumped onto a retiree plan without Part B when she needed outpatient PT and imaging. The retiree plan paid because Medicare should have paid. Enrolling in Part B mid-year stopped the bleeding, but the earlier bills stuck. Common mistakes to avoid: thinking COBRA is the same as before. It isn't for Medicare rules. Waiting for COBRA to end before enrolling. Your SEP clock isn't tied to COBRA. Assuming retiree coverage counts like active employment, it doesn't. And not getting L564 proof right away. Without it, Social Security can't waive your penalty under SEP. Your playbook is tight. If you're 65 plus and leaving active work, enroll in Part B during the 8-month SEP, even if you elect COBRA or a retiree plan. Use CMS 40B and CMS L564 together. Confirm in writing how your plan coordinates with Medicare and whether coverage ends when Part B starts. Keep every letter and email. Do this, and the minefield becomes a straight path. The HSA Timing Rule you can't afford to miss. This is the quiet budget killer because it looks harmless until tax season. If you're working past 65 on an HSA-qualified high-deductible plan and you want to keep contributing, you need clean timing. The second any part of Medicare starts, Part A or Part B, your HSA contribution limit drops to 0 for that month forward. And there's a catch most people don't hear about. When you enroll in Part A after 65, Part A can be retroactive up to 6 months. That retroactive start can turn your last 6 months of HSA deposits into excess contributions unless you fix them. Why this matters: excess HSA contributions trigger a 6% excise tax for each year the excess stays in the account. Add the potential income tax on the earnings from those excess dollars, and the savings you thought you were getting from HSA contributions can evaporate. The benefit of mastering this timing is simple. You keep every legal dollar of tax advantage without penalties, and you avoid scrambling with amended returns. Here's the part that clicked for me. People think, I'll just start Medicare the month I retire. Done. But if you're over 65 and you apply for Part A, Medicare can backdate Part A up to 6 months, not earlier than your 65th birthday month. That means you were technically on Medicare during those back months. If you contributed to your HSA during that retroactive period, those contributions were not allowed. So what's the rule you can trust? If you want to keep contributing to an HSA past 65, you must delay both Part A and Part B, and you must be covered by an HSA-qualified plan through active employment at a large employer where Medicare is secondary. Once you're ready to start Medicare, plan backwards. Pick your intended Part A application month, then stop HSA contributions at least 6 months before that month. That buffer prevents retroactive Part A from overlapping months where you contributed. Let me show you exactly how to implement it. Step 1. Confirm you're on a qualifying HDHP through active employment at an employer with 20 or more employees. If not, the HSA play is off the table. Step 2. Choose your Medicare start strategy. If you'll enroll at 65, just stop HSA contributions in your birthday month. There's no retroactive period before 65. If you're past 65 and plan to enroll later, count back 6 full months from your Medicare application month and set your HSA contribution to 0 starting that earlier month. Step 3. Tell payroll and your HSA custodian the exact stop date. Do it in writing and keep a copy. Now, what if you already contributed and realize Part A was backdated? You can still fix it. Call your HSA custodian and request a return of excess contributions for the ineligible months, including any earnings on those contributions, before your tax filing deadline. If you do this on time, the contributions come back as taxable income for that year, but you avoid the 6% excise tax and the pain compound stop. Miss the deadline and you'll owe the 6% each year the excess sits in the account. Common mistakes to avoid: enrolling in Social Security and not realizing it automatically enrolls you in Part A, which shuts down HSA eligibility. Another is stopping contributions when you retire but forgetting the 6-month retroactive rule. Those last months before filing can still be excess. Also, switching to a non-HDHP mid-year and continuing HSA contributions out of habit. Your eligibility for contributions is determined on the first day of each month. No HDHP, no contribution. Here's a quick now you try example. You're 67 on an employer HDHP contributing to an HSA and plan to leave work September 30. You want Medicare October 1. Because Part A can backdate 6 months from your October application, you stop HSA contributions starting April 1. Payroll confirms in writing. In October, you file for Part A and Part B. You kept 6 months clean, so there are no excess contributions and no excise tax. One more scenario. You retired in June at 66 and applied for Medicare in July. Part A backdated to January, but you contributed to your HSA from January through May. Call your HSA custodian, request a return of excess for 5 months plus earnings, and handle it before the tax deadline. It's fixable if you move fast. The shortcut nobody teaches. Decide your Medicare application month first, then count back 6 months and shut off HSA contributions there. Pair that with a written note to payroll and a reminder on your calendar. Do that and this trap never touches you. Next, we'll turn the penalty into real dollars so you can see how small monthly mistakes become $10,000 over retirement. The money math, how a small penalty becomes $10,000 plus dollars. Let's put dollars to this so you can see the real cost. The late enrollment penalty formula is straightforward. Medicare adds 10% of the standard Part B premium for each full 12 months you delayed Part B without qualifying active employer coverage. That percentage is computed on the standard premium, then added to whatever you actually pay, including any IRMAA surcharge if it applies. Now anchor a current base. The standard Part B premium adjusts each year, but the rule doesn't change. Penalty percent times the base premium gets added to your bill. 2 full years late equals a 20% penalty. 5 full years late equals 50%. 7 full years late equals 70%. The penalty sticks as long as you have Part B. It isn't a lump sum and it doesn't sunset. Here's why that tiny percent isn't tiny over time. Think of your retirement horizon as 20 years of monthly bills. A 20% penalty today becomes 20% of next year's base too, because the penalty is always calculated on the then current standard premium. When the base moves up, your penalty dollars move up. That's why the lifetime cost creeps higher than people expect. Let's walk 2 clean examples so you can estimate your own. Example 1, 2 full years late. Take 20% of the standard premium and tack it on monthly. Over 20 years, that's 240 months of penalty payments. Even at today's base levels, that's thousands of dollars. Layer in periodic increases to the base over 2 decades and the total easily crosses into 5 figures. Example 2, 7 full years late. That's a 70% penalty. Multiply the base by 0.70 and add it to the monthly bill for 20 years. You're now in the range where the penalty alone can mimic a second insurance bill. And remember, this is on top of your underlying Part B premium and any IRMAA. The penalty and IRMAA are separate. They stack. Let's stack it to show the bite. Say your income puts you into an IRMAA bracket. IRMAA raises your Part B premium based on your tax return. The late penalty still uses the standard premium for the calculation, then gets added. So you could be paying the standard premium plus IRMAA plus the late penalty. 3 separate lines, 1 monthly deduction. What about hidden costs that don't show up on the penalty line? There are several. 1. Coverage gaps before your Part B starts. If you enroll during the General Enrollment Period, Part B begins the month after you sign up. Care you receive before that start date isn't covered by Part B, and secondary plans won't step up if Medicare should have been primary. 2. Denied or reduced claims when a plan treats Medicare as primary, but you don't have Part B. That turns into real cash out of pocket. 3. You can miss key Medigap guaranteed issue rights that exist only around certain events. If you delay Part B beyond safe rules, you may face medical underwriting or be forced to wait for a different window, which can raise long-term costs. Let me give you a quick calculator you can run at home. Step 1. Count the number of full 12-month periods you delayed Part B after you were first eligible without qualifying active employer coverage. Step 2. Multiply that number by 10% to get your penalty percent. Step 3. Take the current standard Part B premium and multiply by your penalty percent to get the monthly penalty dollars. Step 4. Estimate your horizon in months. Use 240 months for 20 years. Step 5. Multiply the monthly penalty by your horizon. That's a conservative lifetime estimate because it ignores future base increases. If you want a rougher, more realistic number, add 2-3% per year to the base in your model. Here's a quick aha that helps people make a decision. Compare the lifetime penalty estimate to the premium you'd pay if you start Part B now. If you're on the fence about enrolling and you're not protected by active large employer coverage, the penalty quickly outpaces any short-term savings from waiting. Starting now caps the damage. Waiting lets the meter keep running. 2 common misunderstandings to avoid. First, I can pay the penalty for a year and it goes away. No, it lasts as long as you have Part B. Second, if my income drops, the penalty drops. IRMAA can drop when your income drops. The penalty percent stays tied to how long you delayed, not to your income. Let's close this section with a practical move. If you already suspect you're late, stop the growth today. Enroll at the next available window, SEP, if you truly have proof of active employer coverage from current work, otherwise the GEP. Every month you wait can add to the penalty percent if it completes another full 12-month block. Cut the line now. If you already missed, fast recovery plan. If you realize you missed the safe window, don't freeze. Your goal is simple: stop the penalty from growing, close gaps, and rebuild your options. Here's how to do it step by step. First, enroll at the next available window. If you had coverage from current employment at a large employer when you delayed Part B, you may qualify for a special enrollment period. That SEP runs 8 months from when work or active coverage ended, whichever came first. Use it immediately. If you don't qualify, use the general enrollment period, January 1 through March 31, and your Part B starts the month after you sign up. Either way, earlier is cheaper because each full 12-month block you wait can add another 10% to your penalty. Second, prove creditable coverage if you're claiming the SEP. Ask your employer's HR or benefits office to complete the CMS L564, which verifies you had group health coverage based on current employment and lists the exact dates. Pair that with the CMS 40B, your application for Part B, and submit them together to Social Security. Pro tip: ask HR to include the last day of active coverage, not a COBRA end date, and confirm the employer's headcount meets the 20+ rule or that it was a multi-employer plan where Medicare was secondary. That documentation is what protects you from the penalty. Third, avoid coverage gaps by coordinating effective dates. If you're still inside your SEP, you can request your Part B start the first of the month after Social Security processes your forms, or a near future month that lines up with your other coverage ending. If you're using the GEP, Part B begins the month after you enroll, so book the earliest appointment or online submission in January to minimize any gap. Call your current plan, COBRA, Retiree, or Marketplace, and ask exactly how they coordinate with Medicare once Part B begins and what ends automatically. Get it in writing. Fourth, handle your drug coverage timing to avoid a Part D late penalty. If you don't have creditable prescription drug coverage right now, plan to enroll in a Part D plan or a Medicare Advantage plan with drug coverage as soon as your Part B starts. You generally have 2 months after you enroll in Part B during the GEP to pick up Part D using a related special enrollment period. Don't miss it. The Part D penalty is separate and adds 1% of the national base premium for every uncovered month without creditable drug coverage. Fifth, understand how Medigap and Medicare Advantage timing works now. If you're starting Part B late, your 6-month Medigap open enrollment window begins the first month you're both 65 or older, and have Part B that's your chance to buy any Medigap plan sold in your state with no medical underwriting. If you missed that window or you were previously eligible and passed on guaranteed issue rights tied to loss of active employer coverage, you might face underwriting later. If you prefer Medicare Advantage, you'll have an enrollment window when your Part B starts. Compare carefully. If you have frequent outpatient care, a Medigap plan plus Part D may reduce unpredictable bills compared to many Advantage cost structures. Sixth, pursue appeals if you were misled by employer misstatements or administrative errors. If HR told you COBRA or Retiree coverage protected you from the Part B penalty, gather the written proof, emails, benefits guides, plan documents. File an appeal or request equitable relief through Social Security, explaining the error and attaching your documentation. While relief isn't guaranteed, clear employer misdirection or processing errors sometimes qualify. Keep your timeline tidy: dates of your 65th birthday, work end date, active coverage end date, COBRA start and end dates, and any calls or letters with names and timestamps. Seventh, if HSA timing caused issues, fix excess contributions fast. If your Part A was retroactive and you contributed to an HSA in those months, contact your HSA custodian and request a return of excess contributions plus earnings before your tax deadline. This avoids the 6% excise tax and cleans up your records for future years. Ask your tax preparer to help if forms are required. Eighth, create a quick document pack. You'll want copies of CMS 40B and CMS L564, employer letters showing active coverage dates, plan terminations, COBRA election notices, retiree booklets, and any proof of creditable drug coverage. Scan and store them in a single digital folder. When Medicare or your plan asks for proof, you can respond the same day. That speed often prevents penalties from being misapplied or claims from stalling. 9th, set your next 30 days. Book a Social Security appointment or apply online for Part B with forms ready. Call your current plan to confirm coordination rules and dates. Choose Part D or an Advantage plan aligned to your Part B start. If you prefer Medigap, start comparing lettered plans and prices now so you can enroll during your open window. If you're in the GEP, time any elective care for the first full month your Part B is active. Finally, shift from damage control to prevention. Put calendar reminders 90, 60, and 30 days before any future coverage change, like a spouse's retirement. At 60 days, request a new CMS L564. At 30 days, confirm your Part B effective date and your drug coverage enrollment. This small habit ends most future problems before they start. Paperwork power, forms, proof, and what to keep. This is the boring part that saves you thousands. The right forms and proof turn maybe into approved and keep penalties off your bill. I'll give you the exact pieces, how to get them, and what to store so you can respond in minutes when Social Security or a plan asks for documentation. Start with 2 core forms. CMS 40B is your application for Medicare Part B. You'll use it when you add Part B, during your IEP, SEP, or GEP. CMS L564 is the request for employment information. This is the one that proves you had group health coverage based on current employment and shows exact dates. Without a clean L564, Social Security can't grant the late penalty waiver under the special enrollment period. Here's how to get them done right. Download both forms from SSA.gov or pick them up at your local Social Security office. Fill out CMS 40B yourself, name, Medicare number if you have Part A already, and the month you want Part B to start. Take CMS L564 to your employer's HR or benefits department. Ask them to complete Section B fully: employer name, contact info, employment status, and most importantly, coverage start and end dates tied to active employment. Ask them to include the last day of active coverage, not a COBRA end date. Pro move: request the L564 on company letterhead attached to the form with a benefits contact and phone number. If you or your spouse were covered, get separate L564s or ensure both names are listed with the same precise dates. Then submit CMS 40B and CMS L564 together by fax, mail, or in person. Keep fax confirmations, mailing receipts, or appointment summaries. You'll also want a mini paper trail that supports the L564. Save your employer plan ID cards for each year, enrollment confirmations, pay stubs showing pre-tax medical deductions, and annual benefits guides. These aren't always required, but they resolve questions fast if Social Security needs a second look or the employer made a dating error. Next bucket: termination and transition notices. Keep the letter that shows your last day of active employer coverage, your COBRA election notice with dates, and any retiree plan enrollment confirmation. Circle the dates in pen and scan them. If you're in a multi-employer plan, save the page that explains who pays first for age 65 plus actives. That one page can settle Medicare primary versus secondary questions instantly. For prescription drugs, keep proof of creditable coverage if you're delaying Part D each fall. Plans send a notice stating if drug coverage is creditable. File those. If you later enroll in Part D and someone tries to add a late penalty, those letters erase it. Now, quick call scripts. When you phone HR, ask, is my coverage based on current employment? How many employees does the employer have? 20 or more for at least 20 weeks this year or last. For age 65 plus active employees, is Medicare primary or secondary? Write the answers, names, and dates in a simple call log. If it's a multi-employer plan, ask, is Medicare secondary under this plan's rules? And request an email confirming it. Build a digital folder system. Create a Medicare master folder with subfolders: forms, employer proof, coverage dates, drug creditable letters, COBRA retiree appeals. Scan everything as PDFs, name files with YYYYMMDD and a short label, like 2026-06-30L564 ABC Corp. PDF. Back it up to cloud storage and a USB stick. When you apply, you'll attach exactly what's needed in seconds. Set a reminder timeline. At 90 days before your planned Part B start or retirement date, request the L564. At 60 days, verify the form's accuracy, names, dates, signatures. At 30 days, submit CMS 40B and CMS L564 together and confirm receipt. If you're in the GEP, set a January 2 reminder to apply immediately. Finally, know what to keep long-term. Keep copies of CMS 40B, CMS L564, Social Security approval letters, Medicare cards, plan termination letters, drug creditable notices, and any written HR guidance. Keep them for at least 5 years. These are the receipts that fix penalties, unlock SEPs, and reverse claim denials. It's not flashy, but this paperwork is your insurance against permanent, unnecessary costs. Section 12, Rapid-Fire Myth Busting. Let's blitz the myths that cost people real money. I'll give you the claim, the truth, and the safe move so you don't overthink it. COBRA keeps me safe until it ends. False for Part B timing. COBRA isn't coverage based on current employment, so it doesn't stop the Part B penalty clock, and it doesn't give you a special enrollment period when it ends. Safe move. If you're 65 plus and your active coverage ends, enroll in Part B within the 8-month SEP whether or not you take COBRA. Use COBRA as a supplement, not a substitute. My HR said I don't need Medicare at all. Context matters. If you're actively working at an employer with 20 or more employees and the plan is primary, you can delay Part B if the employer is under 20 or it's retiree or COBRA coverage. You likely need Part B at 65. Safe move. Ask HR 3 specifics: active employment status, employer headcount, and who pays first for 65 plus actives. Get it in writing. I can start Part B any month I want without penalty. Only if you're within your IEP or you qualify for the SEP tied to current employment coverage. Otherwise, you use the general enrollment period, January 1 through March 31, with coverage starting the month after you sign up, and the penalty likely applies. Safe move. Map your clock now and file as soon as you're eligible. I'm on my spouse's plan, so I'm covered. Only if your spouse is actively working at a large employer and the plan is primary. Spouse retired on COBRA at a small employer or on a marketplace plan, that doesn't protect you. Safe move. Verify the spouse's employment status, the employer size, and who pays first. If Medicare is primary, enroll in Part B at 65. I'll contribute to my HSA right up to Medicare. Risky because Part A can be retroactive up to 6 months if you enroll after 65. Those contributions during the retroactive window become excess and can trigger a 6% excise tax unless removed by the tax deadline. Safe move. Pick your Medicare application month, then stop HSA contributions 6 months before that. If you slip, request a return of excess contributions plus earnings from your HSA custodian. ACA marketplace coverage counts like employer insurance. It doesn't for Part B timing. Marketplace and individual plans aren't coverage based on current employment. Safe move. At 65, enroll in Part B during your IEP unless you or your spouse are actively working at a large employer with a primary plan. Retiree coverage lets me delay Part B without penalty. No, retiree coverage typically assumes Medicare is primary and it doesn't provide a Part B SEP when it ends. Safe move. Enroll in Part B during your IEP or the 8-month SEP tied to stopping work. Use retiree coverage as secondary. If my income drops, my penalty goes away. IRMAA can drop when income falls. The late enrollment penalty doesn't. It's based on how long you delayed and lasts as long as you have Part B. Safe move. Stop the penalty from growing by enrolling at the next window. I'll wait for COBRA to end, then join Part B. Your SEP clock started when active coverage ended or you stopped working, whichever came first. Waiting for COBRA to end can push you past 8 months and force you into the GEP with penalties. Safe move. Enroll in Part B during the SEP, then decide whether to keep COBRA secondary. I can prove coverage later if Social Security asks. Not always. Without a completed CMS L564 showing coverage tied to current employment and exact dates, SEP relief can be denied. Safe move. Request the L564 from HR 60-90 days before leaving work, verify dates, and submit with CMS 40B together. Here's the shortcut nobody teaches. Anytime the coverage isn't tied to current work at a large employer where the plan pays first, assume it won't protect you from the Part B penalty. Confirm payer order, document it, and enroll on time. Your 15-minute action plan. Set a timer for 15 minutes. We'll lock your plan, your dates, and your paperwork so the penalty can't touch you. Minutes 1-3, decide your status. Are you working or retired at 65? Whose plan are you on, yours or a spouse's? Is it active employment or retiree COBRA marketplace? Write 3 words on a sticky note: working, retired, self-spouse, plan type. Minutes 4-6, confirm employer size and payer order. Call HR or benefits and ask 3 questions. Is this coverage based on current employment? How many employees, 20 or more, for at least 20 weeks this year or last? For 65 plus actives, is Medicare primary or secondary? Write the answers and the name, date of who told you. If they say Medicare is secondary, you can delay Part B. If Medicare is primary, you need Part B at 65. Minutes 7-8, map your clock. Circle your IEP dates 3 months before your birthday month and 3 months after. If you're delaying safely due to large employer coverage, note your SEP window. 8 months after work or active coverage ends, whichever happens first. If you've already missed both, plan for the GEP. January 1 to March 31, coverage starts the next month. Minutes 9-10, choose your path. Pick one: enroll now, delay safely, or prepare SEP. If enrolling now, decide your Part B start month to prevent gaps. If delaying, confirm the plan is primary and add Get L564 to your calendar. If preparing SEP, set your retirement date and count your 8 months from the end of active coverage. Minutes 11-12, gather proof. Download CMS 40B and CMS L564. Email HR, please complete CMS L564 showing my coverage dates tied to current employment. Include the last day of active coverage. Attach the blank form. Ask for a reply on company letterhead with a benefits contact. Create a digital folder called Medicare Forms and Proof. Add your plan ID card, benefits guide, and any termination or COBRA letters. Minute 13, HSA check. If you're contributing to an HSA and plan to enroll in Medicare after 65, pick your Medicare application month, count back 6 months, and stop contributions starting that earlier month. Email payroll and your HSA custodian with the exact stop date. If you already overcontributed during a retroactive part, a period note. Request return of excess plus earnings before tax deadline. Minute 14, drug coverage. If you don't have creditable drug coverage now, plan to enroll in a Part D plan or a Medicare Advantage plan with drug coverage as soon as your Part B starts. Add a reminder for the first day your Part B is active to pick a plan and avoid the Part D penalty. Minute 15, future proofing. Create 3 calendar reminders tied to your transition date. 90 days, request L564. 60 days, verify dates and signatures. 30 days, submit CMS 40B and CMS L564 together and confirm receipt with Social Security. Add a January 2 reminder for GEP if you might need it. Now let's stress test your plan with 3 quick scenarios. Scenario A, you're 64 and retired at 65. Action: apply 90 days before your birthday month for Part A and B. Set your Part B start for the first of your birthday month. Confirm your current plan's end date and line it up. No penalty. Scenario B, you're 66 on your spouse's active large employer plan. Action: delay Part B, save last year's creditable drug letter. When your spouse picks a retirement date, request L564 listing you both, submit L564 plus 40B together within the 8-month SEP, and start Part B the first of the month after active coverage ends. No penalty. Scenario C, you're 67 at a 12-employee firm still working. Action: enroll in Part A and B immediately. Medicare is primary. If you missed already, enroll during the next GEP. Part B starts the month after. Expect a penalty based on full 12-month delays. Stop it from growing by enrolling right away. 2. Don't lose money checks. If anyone says COBRA lets you wait, respond, my SEP is tied to active coverage ending, not COBRA. Please complete L564 with my last day of active coverage. If someone says you can start Part B anytime, translate, only inside IEP, SEP, or GEP. What dates apply to me? Your 1-page action plan is simple. Status: working, retired, self-spouse, plan primary or secondary. Clock: IEP, SEP, or GEP dates. Paper: CMS 40B plus CMS L564 plus termination and creditable drug letters. Timing: Part B start date aligned to avoid gaps. HSA 6-month stop if needed. Next steps: submit forms, pick drug coverage, set reminders. 15 minutes now saves 5 figures later. Micro stories and case studies threaded in. Case 1, small employer at 65. Jim worked at a 12-employee auto shop. He figured his group plan was enough and skipped Part B at 65. 2 months later, outpatient imaging hit. The plan processed the bill as secondary to Medicare, which wasn't there, and paid almost nothing. Jim owed thousands and learned the hard way that Medicare was primary. He enrolled during the next general enrollment period, started the month after, and got hit with a lifetime penalty based on 2 full years late. What would have fixed it? A 5-minute call asking who pays first here and enrolling in Part B at 65. Case 2, COBRA at 66. Leela took a buyout, grabbed COBRA, and assumed she had time. 18 months later, she tried to add Part B, only to learn her 8-month clock started when active coverage ended, not when COBRA ended. She had to wait for the GEP and picked up a 20% penalty. The document that could have saved her was the employer's CMS L564 showing active coverage dates, submitted within the 8 months. She still used COBRA for dental and vision, but Medicare became her primary medical the moment Part B started. Case 3, spouse coverage at a large employer. Andre stayed on his wife's 3000 employee plan at 65 and delayed Part B before she retired. They requested an L564 listing them both and filed it with CMS 40B. His Part B started the first of the month after her active coverage ended. No gap, no penalty. Their pro move was asking benefits to confirm in writing that Medicare was secondary while she was actively working. That one email anchored their SCP. Case 4, HSA 6-month rule. May was 67, contributing to an HSA and planned to retire in October. She learned about Part A's retroactive start and shut off HSA contributions April 1, exactly 6 months before her October Medicare application. 0 excess, 0 excise tax. Her coworker Sam retired mid-year without stopping contributions. He requested a timely return of excess for 5 months plus earnings before the tax deadline and avoided the 6% excise. Both kept their receipts, payroll emails, custodian confirmations, and tax notes. Case 5, Marketplace plan at 65. Rosa loved her ACA plan and thought she could keep it a bit longer. A neighbor warned her that Marketplace coverage doesn't protect against the Part B penalty. She filed during her initial enrollment period, set Part A and B for the first of her birthday month, and moved to Part D the same day. Her takeaway was simple. Marketplace is fine before 65, but after 65 you need Medicare unless you're on active large employer coverage. Case 6, Retiree plan assumptions. Carlos took his company's retiree plan and skipped Part B. His retiree booklet said Medicare is primary, but he missed it. Physical therapy claims were reduced to near zero. He enrolled in Part B mid-year and the bleeding stopped, but the earlier bills stuck. He now keeps a copy of that page in a folder labeled Medicare Primary, so nobody in his circle repeats it. Case 7, multi-employer nuance. Priya's 18-employee firm participates in a multi-employer plan. HR wasn't sure about payer order, so she asked for an email from the plan confirming Medicare was secondary due to the multi-employer structure. With that in hand, she delayed Part B safely and later used her SEP with an L564 that matched those dates. The lesson: don't guess, get the payer order in writing. Each of these people fixed their issue with the same tools: confirm who pays first, map the right clock, and keep proof. Enroll in Part B on time unless you're covered by active large employer insurance where Medicare is secondary, or you risk a lifetime penalty. Download the one-page action plan in the description, then watch my IRMAA deep dive to protect your total Medicare costs. Subscribe for weekly Medicare traps, timing rules, and money-saving checklists. Your future self will thank you.